Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of Poker Mind Expansion. So, in the last episode, we were talking about Pavlov and we were talking about Freud, and today we are going to be talking about Carl Jung, and we're going to be talking about the religions and their piece in terms of the way that our society is structured and the way that we tend to make associations with particular things, and we will look at the ways that we are incentivized to memorize ideas within a certain context, and we will see how through neuroscience it's very hard to create new connections that are outside of this fragment of information based on this context. And we will see how mind expansion is what is absolutely necessary to be taking it to the next level as far as strategy is concerned. And when I say it, I mean ourself. But what is it? It is not the illusory character that we often identify with, but it is ourself, which is the true strategist. And all of us are true strategists. And we have to remember this, that there are people with higher IQs, certainly, than, say, the aggregate of poker players. But IQ is not necessary. What's necessary is heart. What's necessary is attention. And what's necessary is consciousness. And willingness to be wrong. And willingness to go beyond what feels safe. Those are what's necessary. But to look for certainty is simply to look for a box. For the people who are taught through the education system that it's important, when in fact actually it's not really so important. And on part of Poker Mind Expansion, it's important that we think about different methods that go outside of the box. We do things that we've never done before. It's not simply a function of coming to Poker Mind Expansion and believing in the words that I'm saying. That's an absolute waste of time, and it would be more productive to watch Doug Polk. When we're watching Poker Mind Expansion, it's very important to understand that we have to be able to think deeply about how this relates to ourselves. Because often the brain generates an image or a model of who we are or what we think we are relative to the world, and we feel like what we are doing is absolutely perfect. And we open YouTube channels to be able to find people that reinforce our current beliefs. But in fact, what's necessary to find consciousness is to go beyond our beliefs. And this is why I will be exploring a number of ideas from the sociological perspective or the psychological perspective as it pertains to man. Because we are simply a product of the totality of all of our experiences. No one else's experiences. We ourselves are our own world of knowledge. We have a vast expanse. And it's not about the knowledge that we've gained before, but actually it is about being able to expand our imagination to be able to think outside of the box. Because the society has been trained to think very one-dimensionally, to be able to categorize itself and other people based on the external circumstance, so we know who to speak well to, so we know who to speak nasty to. So we know who it's okay to hurt. By calling them a predator, it's okay to be predatory toward them. This is kind of the logic that society uses. It's very, very hypocritical and oxymoronic. And when it comes to poker, we cannot use self-contradictory logic without it being a very large blind spot or a weakness in our poker game. We have to be very self-aware. Now, one of the methods that I'd like to use today is singing. And it has been said by Albert Einstein that song and expanding the imagination are absolutely intertwined. It has been said by Leonardo da Vinci, who was not even a singer, that music is the most fundamental key to being able to expand one's mind. I personally do not believe the same thing. I think there are many different methodologies to get up the hill. But doing things that are so beautiful and so magnificent are very important. Also, the mind often likes to identify with a particular type of music, meaning that the personality behind the perceiver very often says, this is the kind of music I like and this is the kind of music I don't like. When certainly you can find a better artist, you can certainly find deeper music. But the point is that actually, when you come into this undifferentiated awareness, this undifferentiated consciousness, there is not a higher and a lower, because all things simply are, and all things are godly. All things are absolutely magnificent, but it is a human dream which tries to bring things lower to make other things higher. Because black cannot exist without white, and life cannot exist without death. So today we are going to sing Jimi Hendrix All Along the Watchtower. It's a very magnificent tune. And I would absolutely encourage you not to listen to the podcast like music, but I would encourage you to sing along, especially if you feel any resistance. And by the way, society always tells us that we need to have a nice voice because it's important to be perceived by others well when we sing. This has nothing to do with love for music. Someone that can speak this way knows absolutely nothing about the grandeur, about the beauty of music. So we don't have to worry about what other people think, and we don't have to worry about these kind of ideas of, well, I don't want to sing because it's too cool or it's not cool enough. This is a very good mind expansion training methodology, especially if we have the opportunity to sing songs that we ourselves really enjoy. It's one of the greatest methods for mind expansion. Painting as well is a very good method. But it helps us get in touch with our bodies more. And it helps us get out of the self-referential judgment of ourself and others. And it helps us come into being. I believe that music is one of the most fundamental keys that poker players can use today. Because it is so widely available and it is so easy to love it. Because all music is so beautiful. Whether you're talking about Mozart, or you're talking about Jimi Hendrix, or you're talking about Bob Dylan. These two are very good, you know. Or you're talking about the Rolling Stones, or you're talking about the Beatles. All of these musicians are magnificent. Muddy Waters, very beautiful man. Beethoven, very beautiful man. Ray Charles, very beautiful man. Tupac Shakur, magnificent man. Absolutely fantastic poet this man is. Eminem, another amazing poet. Real music is where you can take away the tunes and you can just listen to the poetry, and it's beautiful. What people are able to do linguistically, and it is an art just like science. But the society often tries to teach us that things like who is the ultimate fighter are very important. Who is the NBA champion is very important. Who won the last war is very important. Because the society pays for entertainment, it pays for bombs. But it certainly does not pay in the same way for poetry. It does not pay in the same way for art and beauty. And it used to be this way back in Rome, back in Greece. The aesthetics were much higher than they are today, but people are far more interested in killing. People are more interested in bombs. They're very violent. That is all they watch on television is killing, violence, conflict, drama. But it is what the ego enjoys. And it's important to remember that we can be joyous with music. We don't have to use it as a cheap distraction. It is absolutely magnificent. And even if we don't play an instrument well, it doesn't matter. If we can strum a small beat, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We are using the ripples, the vibrations of the universe to be able to get in touch with who we are. It's very healing. Music therapy has been proven to make more connections than many other types of therapies. Psychedelic therapy as well, which I would say if you do with a therapist can be very powerful, along with music therapy, has been proven to make more connections than any other type of therapy. This is modern science. There are studies. So it's important that when we start to talk about expanding the mind, we do not look at it from a one-dimensional view of only poker. We are willing to go outside of the box. But most 10NL players go to a video and they see it. They say, man, I'm looking for poker tricks only, because they're on a one-track mind, because they don't understand that expanding their consciousness and getting in touch with who they are, learning to love themselves and unconditionally accept the decisions that they make. So the self-referential judgment of, man, I don't know if I made the decision that was correct. This self-doubt that constantly appears, rather than trying to find solutions through strategies to fix it. In fact, these thoughts only arise because of a lack of self-acceptance, because of a lack of self-love. But I guarantee you the 10NL player is not self-aware enough to admit it. He will simply say it is only a strategy, because he hides behind his intellect, because he is afraid of himself. But in order to expand your mind, you have to go beyond the intellect. You cannot simply be a philosopher. You have to make it an art. Because poker is not a science. It is absolutely far closer to music. It is far closer to art. But the theory is very important to be able to have the framework with how to approach this game. If we understand the framework as to how to think critically, we don't need to memorize solutions. So let's get ready and let's sing this song. And if you know it, just sing it out loud. If you want to grab the lyrics, go ahead. It is called All Along the Watchtower by Bob Dylan. And I enjoy Jimi Hendrix's version very much. In fact, I enjoy all the versions. I love to watch different covers of people on YouTube that sing their heart out. In fact, I often find that those are better than the originals because it's so different. It's got so much more flavor. And so don't be afraid. Sing with me, please. We have to just expand our mind, and we don't have to be perfect. It's so fun. And we'll sing other songs as well. So if you don't like this song, it's okay. We'll sing another one. Don't worry. And there's no guilt around not singing it. It doesn't matter. It's just for the joy of existence itself.
This is a thief. There's too much confusion. I can't get no relief. Business man, drink my wine. Blind man, take my herb. Never ever on mine. Nobody heard his word. Among us, who defend life is but a joke. You and I have been through that, and this is not our fate. So let us stop talking falsely now. The hour's getting late. Hey, yeah, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
that was incredibly fun. I have not done that in a couple of days, singing a song out loud. So thank you guys for letting me be a part of this. This has been very fun. And now I want to move on to going back to what we were talking about in the last episode. We were talking about mind expansion. We were talking about Sigmund Freud and how the mediocre mind very often likes to reduce greatness. And it likes to make all greatness, all people who have improved themselves, who have looked at themselves, who have thought about who they are, what the seed that they are is, and they have decided to water the seed. Sigmund Freud reduces all of these people into sexual perverts because he does not understand himself and he is jealous. So he feels very offended by all of the great people in the world that are very creative, that are able to make many connections, that are not interested in war, but they are interested in love. They are interested in kissing. They are not interested in fighting. They are interested in singing songs and dancing, rather than having political debates. They are more interested in love. They're more interested in love. But who is? Who is? Look around. We see it in movies that people are so much more kind, so much more willing to show their emotions, and that's why we watch them. But in reality, people are very afraid to be themselves because they have been punished by the mediocre mind and told that they are not good enough, that they must be robots, that they must meet some criteria in order to feel like a good human being. Well, let me tell you something. You are absolutely perfect. You don't have the capacity to be imperfect, because you are part of existence. You are not separate from it. So these ideologies that are imposed on us are completely false. They're made out of thin air. But the mediocre needs revenge. And we have to be very aware that as we expand our minds, we have to protect the seed of our consciousness. And it is absolutely better to be safe than sorry. It is absolutely important to protect what it is that we are, because the entire life of a psychoanalyst is to interpret someone's actions in a way that demeans them because it creates presuppositions as to how they should behave. But that is absolutely unnatural. And these people forget that they come from dust. They are still dust, and they will go back into dust. They are the totality of it. They are God himself manifest. They don't understand that you cannot psychoanalyze anybody. You can only psychoanalyze yourself. You can only go and get in touch with what you are, the truth, your original face. But you have to go and go and go and go to the beyond. Now it's important to understand that Freud is very, very superficial. But the third tier that we are going to talk about is the psychological. Now, if you remember, we talked about Adler before. And Adler lives in the world of the psychological. He wrote a book called The Will to Power. It is very, very egoic in nature. But it gives a lot of great insights into the human condition. But Freud reduces everything to wanting to have sex with your own mother, wanting to be a motherfucker. I don't agree with Freud. I don't think that everybody wants that. I think that some people just want to feel comfortable in their skin, and I feel that some people enjoy being creative and using their powers and using their gift of their imagination to make their life and the lives of others a more deep celebration, without having to worry about how we are going to pay to go out for a meal, without having to worry about how we are going to pay for the children's education. By expanding our mind, we have the opportunity to be able to feed ourselves, so we are able to play this absolutely magnificent game that we continue to play. Because poker only gets more deep. Poker only gets more beautiful. People are scared of AI, but they don't understand that if they're good enough, they can go and play in casinos against the best. And it's not as hard as it looks. The problem is that low stakes players always start solving the wrong problems. But it's painful to the 10NL player to admit that he needs to stop studying flops and trying to understand what to defend against the c-bet when he doesn't even understand the meaning of the value in the situation. He has not even understood what get to river means. He has not even thought about how to make EV deeply. But he has memorized a strategy. But it hurts, and the 10NL player whose ego hurts will never be able to get out of his own way. If you want to learn something deeply, you obviously don't go to YouTube and type in chess opening strategies to learn chess. You try to think about what the meaning of chess is. You read a chess book. You don't just try to find openings. If you have interest in chess, if you want to become a master, the same is for poker. You don't just find pre-flop openings. And you don't just watch a training video of someone playing chess and then say, I got it now. If you really want to master it, you have to think about the meaning of every single part of the game. What do all these principles mean? And often that involves doing a significant amount of thinking for ourselves rather than getting cookie cutter prescriptions from other people. Because we ourselves have to understand it. And it is not a matter of being tested on regurgitating the correct words in the correct order to convince ourselves that we understand it. We ourselves have to understand how EV is made and why poker is played the way it's played. The methods that the training sites offer are very detrimental to the growth of a poker player. It's the same as someone talking with their buddies and saying, man, the news is really biased. Man, they're not really honest. Yet these buddies still continue to watch the news. The reason why is because the mind wants to seek authority. It's the reason why we can sit here right now and say the training sites don't know what they're talking about. If they were to give you the right information, you would not continue to buy their subscription. In addition to that, no one is going to sell that information at such a cheap price because the people that know it don't want it out there. No one wants it out there. From the competitive monetary perspective, there are some people who have cashed in on this fact that no one else wants it, so they create a course and they give as much information as they can, and those are very valuable courses, by the way. A YouTube channel giving a course that's free, generally they're not going to give you so much. And when I say very much, specifically what I'm referring to is information that's not already out there for a long amount of time. So there are many YouTube people and videos that are on training sites that are tremendously valuable. But after you get to a certain skill level, you basically can get almost nothing out of this material. So I'm saying what I'm specifically referring to is kind of the secrets that a lot of high stakes players would be using to get from mid stakes to high stakes, and even using them at high stakes in some cases. And these are very, very valuable for a select group of people. Unfortunately, I mean, low stakes players might think that they can just grab these tricks and understand, and they cannot. But it's a very good way to sell courses as well. It's not demeaning, and in fact, they would learn a lot because at least they would have a very good framework. But also something that one could combine it with would be just studying fucking game theory and trying to understand the meaning of all of the actions. And understanding that no actions happen in isolation. There's no separation between anything that we do in poker and any other part of poker. And the entirety of it has to be synthesized in our mind. There are some people, like on upswing poker who've created some very strong courses because they wanted to take advantage of the market. That would be a really brilliant thing to get, right? Something like that. Also, there were some courses that were made on Phil Galfond sites, Run It Once. Those courses are actually really good training material because they create a framework with which how to think about the game. They actually start from A to Z in terms of how to expand the way that we think about poker. And I'm not advocating doing training courses. I'm simply saying, like, from the perspective of I'm trying to get better with a blank piece of paper, without me being against them, because I'm not against training sites. I just don't like the way that they're formatted very often, and I don't like their emphasis on certain things that matter less than things that matter. And for someone that's very good like Phil Galfond, he says this in his videos, and every single time I watch his videos, I'm always amazed at how much I learn. But then for the other coaches that are on various training sites that are regurgitating absolute bullshit that they have borrowed, that are simply a collection of words that are being cookie cuttered and parroted in situations where they don't even understand the meaning, and this is being taught to people who are paying their money to understand how the game works. And it's so obvious to anybody that understands theory how often people are getting things very incorrect in the ways that they're putting it, and they don't understand what they're talking about. It pains me to think that there are people paying for this kind of stuff. I would pay infinite amounts of money to listen to someone like Ben Solsky, to listen to someone like Phil Galfond, to listen to, there are about 10 other people that I would like to say. Daniel Cates, etc. There are so many people. Isaac Haxton. I can't remember, or actually I'm just embarrassed about mispronouncing the last name, so I will say his screen name, True Teller. These kind of people, I would love to hear how they think. And these people that I mentioned are very articulate. There are some other greats that would not be as articulate because they perceive the game in a different way, which is also important to understand, that just because someone is able to use the tool of language and someone is not able to articulate the way that they're playing, it means absolutely nothing. Isildur was not able to articulate almost anything, yet he had the greatest imagination. But it is the mediocre mind who thinks that it's possible to put the multi-dimensional game and your understanding into a few words. They think it's so cheap. Only an intellectual who's very scared of the vast expanse of poker can try to box poker in mere words. So there's a depth. And this is why Freud was not able to penetrate, because he wanted certainty. He wanted to be able to box everybody in. And Adler was the exact same. And he is absolutely wrong. Now, Adler, who wrote this great book called The Will to Power, and I will not say it's great. In fact, it's very obvious, but from this perspective, you could call it great because it does give a very deep insight to a blind man like Sigmund Freud, like a Pavlov, because it shows men that they are not just the body, they are also influenced by their psychology, which is a collection of memories and experiences that happened in their past. Now, they were able to prove this, Pavlov, who was a behavioralist, with dogs, by ringing a bell and creating an association with food. However, it's important to understand that Adler is of a much higher tier, because psychology is far more complex. And most of the YouTubers that talk about finding a little trick to help your psychology, they will never take you beyond. Because they don't understand that it's not founded on tricks. Self-realization happens through learning to love yourself unconditionally without an idea that I have to do this, I have to do that. The mechanism of I have to is the fucking problem. It is a thought that arises in consciousness. And then another thought might be, well, I don't want to be lazy. Those things have nothing to do with each other. First of all natural animals are lazy at some level, and they're not lazy when they don't need to be. When they're hungry, they go and get food. You know? When they're being rained on, they're not lazy, they go and look for shelter. But you have to understand what the meaning of these words that we use are before we just repeat them like parrots. But unfortunately, the very new poker players are coming into a time where they're given false information from the training sites. They're given false information from other YouTubers that talk about self-help and success and all this bullshit about things that don't fucking matter. If you become successful, and then what are you going to do? You're going to hallucinate about how someone thinks about you in a good way, and that's going to make you happy. Do you not understand how this is a facade? It doesn't work. But the eyes cannot see themselves. Fortunately, us poker players cannot be so delusional, and we have not been. Because if we cared about how we looked in the eyes of others, I don't think we would have been in this great profession. And in addition to that, with the amount of societal criticism that we face, and the fact that it took more than just a little while to be able to learn this game. Remember, there was a period before we started making money where we had a deep love that was beyond just making dollars because it's a beautiful game. And we felt pressure at some level. At least we know friends who've talked about feeling pressure from their family, from society, about it being something wrong. I found it a little bit exciting because I was kicked out of multiple schools. I was quite degenerate when I was a teenager. So I started playing it with the kids, and I was not understanding why they were always beating me and I couldn't win. I played it 2NL, 5NL, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of hands, absolutely losing. Having no clue whatsoever, but I really just knew that I loved the game. That's the thing, is it felt like poker was not like a game in the world where you play politics and the more you lie to someone, the more you deceive yourself, the better it works out. It's absolutely wrong. Poker has nothing to do with that. Poker is about truth. Poker favors the people that are self-aware. Poker always favors the people who are not so egoistic, the people who are more creative and able to think outside of the box. Now, Adler, instead of making everything into sexuality, Adler basically makes everything into the idea that people have inferiority complexes. So the only reason why you would paint a picture is because you feel inferior, and you're going to show this picture to someone else and try to get them to believe that you're not inferior. And this idea is not absolutely absurd because of the way that people are conditioned, but we are deeper than that. We are far more deep than that. Now, what he said is that people try to become great because they don't feel good enough. And it's not the case that their body cannot make decisions. And by their body clicking buttons on a screen, they may accumulate money. And because of this, they may choose to have a more comfortable life. This I would not reduce to inferiority. I would actually call this intelligence. But you have to understand how poker players, creative people, are often shunned by society because society does not promote critical thinking. Society wants to find boxes to think in, to believe in, belief structures, to say this is correct. This religion is absolutely correct. 93% of people don't believe in it. Well, they're wrong. Only our people are correct. This is pure delusion. But it has to do with the unconsciousness that man faces and the fact that he is a slave to his emotions. He is a slave to his past conditionings. But it hurts his ego so much that he cannot admit this. Poker players don't have this kind of ego, and the reason why is because if they did, they would have lost money. Poker always requires a certain amount of truth, a certain amount of honesty. So we have never been slaves of the society at this level, and this is why we have to go beyond. The idea that any person trying to become a great poker player is just reduced to someone with an inferiority complex does not take into account the magnificence of this beautiful game. If you had all the colors of the rainbow in a canvas, is your painting because you feel inferior? What a delusion. How can you even create this frame? It is absolutely ugly. And he would also say that someone trying to get to high stakes because they want to play against the best, because they love the game, because they want to have the best canvas, they want to have the best pastels. They want to play with their friends. They want to make the best music with their friends. They are not trying to sell a number of records. They just love music for the sake of music. It's not a means to an end. These people are simply on a power trip, according to Adler. But this is absolutely wrong. I have seen firsthand people like Isildur, Linus Love, Sauce, True Teller Doyle Brunson, Tom Dwan, the list goes on. I mean, absolutely, this list goes on because you've got so many people that are playing at mid-stakes because they love the game, not because they reduce it to a means to an end. And they might not be fucking amazing, but it doesn't matter because they love it, because they understand that poker is what's given them their freedom, their peace, their love. But so many of the psychologists back in the 50s, the 40s, they did not understand themselves. And they did not understand people who were courageous, people who thought outside of the box. Mahatma Gandhi was one of the greatest political strategists in history. What Mahatma Gandhi was able to do by finding India's independence, it was absolutely unheard of, and there was no possibility in anybody's mind of India finding a way to be independent in the time frame that Gandhi did. Now, of course, he had to play the role of a spiritualist. In fact, he might have even believed that he was. But deep down, he was one of the greatest strategists that ever existed. We have a man like Charles Darwin, who was kicked out by his family. And he was threatened that if you don't go to school and study what is expected of you by the family to be able to make a living, you will be kicked out forever. You will not be part of us. But what did Darwin do? Darwin had a teacher at his university. And his teacher told him, you should absolutely go and study rocks. You should absolutely go and study different life forms. Don't go into what your parents tell you. Do what you love. And Darwin sacrificed the ties with his family because he wanted to do what he did for love. And his family was not wrong. They might have been cruel, they might have been wrong, but this is what they were taught. They were taught, beat your kid into submission to make sure they're able to get the dollar. Because they are so afraid that if their child is independent and thinks for himself, he will starve. But it is never correct. And what did Darwin do? Darwin faced great difficulty when he went on the ship. The captain was absolutely mad, and he would not stop about how Darwin had to be a very great religious man. He could not create these different ideas that went against the Catholic faith. Because as Darwin started thinking about how to create a synthesis or a theory, which was later called evolution, the captain of the boat threatened to kill him. He threatened to throw him off board because it was against the beliefs of Jesus Christ. And he went farther than that. He told Charles Darwin that if I am going to meet you off the ship and you have sent this thesis to the professors, I am going to take your head off because it goes against the church. The captain was a fanatic, and Darwin wanted to talk about his ideas, and he did not know how offensive this could be. Darwin was a great revolutionary. Nelson Mandela was a great revolutionary who no one else can understand. These great men in history we have to take lessons from, and we have to think about their contributions, because their contributions are absolutely deep when it comes to thinking about mind expansion. And when the mind expands, it has no egoistic ideas to compare itself to others in a way of superiority or inferiority, because everything is God. Everything is love. And the entire game of poker is beauty. Just like when we first started playing, it was beautiful. It was fun. We wanted to hit that pair on the river. We were excited. And now we are reduced to mere robots that think about EV, that think about money. But we don't even do that as well as we could. The 10NL player cannot admit it. He always says, I'm absolutely perfect. But as we get higher and higher in stakes, we learn that the more complacent we become, the worse it is for us. But the egoistic man cannot understand because he does not want to improve himself. There are no ideas of superiority, because he bows his head to all of poker. He will bow down to the dealers. He will bow down to each recreational player. He will bow down to each regular that he thinks is better or worse than him strategically. Because there is no idea of holier than thou. Everybody is holy and everybody is divine and everybody is so beautiful. And we come together in this game to be able to feel what we are, to express ourselves. We don't come to this game to try to be superior. We come to this game to express this art, to play this beautiful song, to be a part of this music. Now, Gautama Siddhartha Buddha did not feel as he was superior to anybody when his mind expanded. He was born a king, so there was absolutely no question of inferiority, because he came from the top of the society, from the very beginning. So it was not a question. Yet he bowed to every man, and he kissed every man's feet, because he loved everybody absolutely equally. Now, he was the richest man in the country, and he was the most powerful man. He was the prince. He was going to be the king. There was no power to be attained, nothing more, because he already had it in his fingertips. There were no more riches. There were no more riches to be attained. They had all the most beautiful women in the court just for him. In the entire earth, there was not a place that had more beautiful women. Everything was available to him. Now, Adler would say that Buddha quit everything because he felt inferior and he wanted to achieve higher goals outside of the material world, and this was egoistic. But Adler would see everything from the frame of inferiority, because he could not believe that a man could have any goal outside of his ego. But that's because Adler lived inside of a one-dimensional box of the ego. Now, I think it's very clear that we don't have to live in these ways, that we can expand what we are. Now, the fourth dimension is the psycho-spiritual, which is essentially the heart center. Anahata, the chakra. So there was a psychologist, and his name was Carl Jung, and Asagoli as well. And there were many others that also penetrate the realm. But famously, I like to speak of Carl Jung, because Carl Jung goes far higher than someone like Pavlov, someone like Freud, someone like Adler, because someone like Jung is open to more possibilities, because they accept the world of the irrational, the unconscious. They don't confine themselves to their own reason, because they realize the potential that their reason is self-created, and it also might be self-contradictory, so they don't cling to it harder because it's agreed upon with other people. But they go deeper into themselves. They're much more reasonable because they accept the irreason. And the irrational is not to be denied, but actually it is to be accepted and understood. But the problem is that this is where modern psychology stops. In 2024, this is where it stops. And this is why it's called the fourth rung. And the fourth rung is just in the middle of the whole ladder. There are 3 rungs on either side. And that is why modern psychology is a half-truth, which is often accepted. But a half-truth is very dangerous, because they don't give the full story. And modern psychology is not complete. It is not even science. It is hanging right in the middle, and it's very, very shaky. It's not certain about anything. Everything is a hypothesis, and any scientist, any philosopher would not even categorize psychology into pseudoscience. They would say it's far more hypothetical than even calling it anything to do with science. So it's important that we are aware that what psychology puts out about mental game coaching is only a presupposition. But if we are willing to expand our minds, we can go beyond that. Now, the fifth realm is the spiritual, something like Islam, something like Hinduism, Judaism, Christianity, the mass organized religions. And these people always remain stuck in the fifth. They don't go beyond the spiritual. The organized religions, the churches, they end up remaining there because they're not willing to question the mass, because there are so many people that agree. So many people agree. They're all my friends, are all around me. How could I disagree? They're not willing to question because it's very psychologically difficult. Most people that get caught up in these never can go beyond them. Even though that they remember that God is love, they fall in the illusion that they are separate from God, and they have to remember their oneness. This is why there are certain methods or systems of thought that are called transcendental, because they shift your conscious permanently, where you realize that you are not a separate psychological entity from the whole, that it is just an identity that your brain has created for you and you have currently identified with. But the fifth cannot go beyond it, because they are too conditioned to believe that there are higher entities than themselves. They have been taught to hate themselves, but one day in the future, if they are good people for now, they will be accepted. But this is absolutely false. This is it is beautiful that they understand that love and hate is not the key, but they have to go beyond and remember that they are worthy of love and unconditional love. And that means that they and their Father have to become one in the union, as Jesus Christ stated. Jesus was not saying, I am God. The Christians have simply misinterpreted Jesus Christ because they themselves are not in the Christ state of consciousness. So to the egoic perspective, it is unfathomable to realize that they themselves are absolutely perfect and beautiful. It's just that they have forgotten their true identity. So the sixth tier, the sixth rung, is the spiritual transcendental. And you could call this something like yoga. But unfortunately, people become very identified with the idea of yoga, and their identity gets stuck because they're more interested in how they're perceived in yoga pants or doing the postures, and their yoga community, which is still an identity, they don't make the realization, they don't transcend. Almost all of yoga is simply useless gymnastics. It is beautiful that they get in touch with their body, but the egoic identity which attaches to I am a person of yoga and you are not, and therefore I am better than you because I am a yogi, or whatever, or the opposite, or I feel like I am much more close to the ground and you people think that you are better than, and now I feel superior to you subtly because you feel superior, whatever. This has to be transcended as well. And this is why I would call this the sixth rung. There are also other methods very similar to this. But all over the world down the ages, then there have been deeper things that they call very spiritual, where they say spirituality is for people who have already been to hell, and religion was for people who have not been to hell yet. Or something like that, and it's very true because these people have suffered very dearly, but they do not understand that they are perfect. So they don't need to worship or believe in higher entities. They simply have to break the illusion of separation, which there are many methods that we're talking about. It is mind expansion, in fact. But in these talks, we're talking about it sort of from the religious perspective. We'll talk about it more scientifically in the future as well. But there are organizations which are non-dogmatic, that seem to be more experiential, where you have to do something with your body and your mind. You have to create a certain kind of harmony within yourself, and you can ride on that harmony, and you can ride on that cloud of love, and you can get much closer to truth. You are much farther away from your original reality. And yoga certainly can comprehend that. You could say that there are other religions like Christianity where they're very close to God. They're praying all the time. Their entire life effort is God. Or in Islam or in Hinduism where they really get into it and it's not a social thing, but it's truly what they are. Then you could say they enter about the sixth rung. And this is where most spiritual people stay. For every 97% of people that think they are spiritual, they never make the realization that spirituality is just a set of methods to differentiate truth from falsehoods, because spirituality becomes their new belief. They don't understand that the one that believes has to realize that it is not separate and it is one with God. But very often people stop at this and they feel that how can you think you're one with God? And this is their own ego judging themselves, which has created the model of the world, thinking that this is how it is, when actually they're simply judging themselves, and they cannot go beyond the sixth rung. And I would say that 95% of spiritual people will never go beyond it, because they have too much of an unwillingness, and also they probably don't have good guidance, but they honestly, it's probably more about guidance and information. But the ego also always looks to authority. So if there is a guru who is preaching hope, even though he doesn't understand that you have to go beyond hope, you have to realize that you have to have a true awakening out of the dream, not just have a mini spiritual awakening. You have to wake up out of the dream. But the gurus that are famous are generally not going to say this, because they're not real gurus. That's why they kill a real guru like Jesus Christ. That's why they kill a real guru like Socrates. That's why they throw stones at Gautama Siddhartha Buddha, because they don't like these kind of people. So in the seventh rung, this is the true transcendental, and this is how you make the realization, to realize that there is no superiority, it is no inferiority. That was all a dream. You are one, you are the totality of existence. Methods like Tantra, methods like Taoism, methods like Buddhism, Zen. Now, Buddha's attitude is that the seventh, which means Pragayama Paramita, which is like the wisdom that is transcendental, wisdom that comes only when all the bodies have been crossed. When you have just become pure awareness, just a witness, pure subjectivity, a pure expanse, your mind is one. Your mind is equanimous. You are not fragmented into 100 million different pieces. That is transcendence. And unless a poker player reaches the transcendental, he will have just been given toys and sugar sticks, and he will be provided with false meanings. And just the other day, I was watching a coaching session about how someone went from 25 NL to 200 NL by memorizing tricks. And he was saying how he could not move up from 200 NL, and he might end up having to move back down, but he was feeling so happy about this meaningless accomplishment. And it's important to remember there was a book by Josh Waitzkin which was called The Art of Learning, and he spoke about how the coaches of chess very often taught people how to win for their school from 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade. He wanted to make them the best 5th grade players by the time they got there to win the championship. But this was absolutely detrimental, because what happened is that these players memorized tricks and they lost the forest for the trees. Rather than creating a holistic understanding and framework for how the game works, winning was told was the most important thing, when winning or losing was absolutely meaningless, because they didn't even understand how the game worked. So winning and them believing that it was a lot more than chance in it of itself was an illusion. Just as a recreational player getting there and thinking that he wins and it's because he's amazing, that is mostly a delusion. It's possible that he made some decisions that could have been better or worse, and because of that he might have played better than he played before. But everybody has something they can work on, and the person that tells you they don't have something that they can work on is very often at mid stakes or low stakes or micro stakes. No one at high stakes thinks like that, because they always are trying to understand themselves better. I took my motorcycle out for a ride the other day, and I saw a big billboard, and it said barbecue with a hamburger and a big round spatula type of thing that was squishing the hamburger down. It looked very good. And on top of it, it said something to believe in. I thought, like, man, it's people have just fallen so low. When you start believing in, like, slaughterhouses and hamburgers, you don't believe in yourself. People believe in cars, they believe in houses, they believe in their bank account balances. They're dreaming. I mean, but look around. I mean, it's surprising. I mean, it's as if, spirituality and love and the aesthetics and the appreciation of life and the beauty has disappeared because people are afraid to laugh, people are afraid to cry, people are afraid to hug, to kiss. In fact, they will say kissing someone on the cheek is sexual perversion. And in fact, it might be, depending on who does it. But we've forgotten our way. It's completely disappeared, our way of being beautiful. We are not like the tribes that existed before, who sang, who danced, who played, who frolicked. Because we are taught by the school system, by the society, that whatever we are, we're not good enough. We do this, well, we need to judge ourselves. We go left, we need to judge ourselves. We go right, we need to judge ourselves. We don't go anywhere, we're lazy. We go forward, we're wrong. We should have gone backwards. We go backwards, we're told that it's wrong. Why? Why does this happen? So now there's no more God, there's no more love. Now there's a Cadillac, there's a Lincoln, there's a better condo, there's a more attractive woman. And what does it matter? I have a more attractive woman, and then what? I'm going to imagine myself compared to my friends and think about how I'm more superior to other people because my girlfriend is more attractive? It's not like her chromosomes are going to be very, very much different than the other ones in terms of mating and your offspring, if that's your goal. It's obviously about the self-image, but this can only come from someone who is very insecure, who cares more about the surface of life than the depth that they are. But man doesn't understand. Poker players understand. Poker players understand that these things don't matter. They're beautiful. You have a beautiful woman, you have a beautiful painting, you have a beautiful waterfall. Enjoy it. Play in the waterfall. Enjoy the picture. But only ugliness can remember beauty. How could it be any other way? Because you can only see something through comparison. But it hurts the ego. It hurts the ego very deeply. It hurts the ego very deeply. Because the ego has to believe in something. It has to believe in a training method. It has to believe in a system to hold on to because it's scared of its own doubt. And mind expansion is about realizing that doubt is a social conditioning. We are taught to doubt ourselves until we believe it. So rather than trying to get more information to alleviate this self-doubt, what we actually have to do is learn to give attention and love to the parts of our experience that don't get it. But the big macho men who are very terrified of themselves, who are pretenders, who are phonies, that say, I'm so big, I'm so bad, I'm so macho, I'm happy to kill people, I'm happy to go to war, I'm happy to fight, I'm happy to scream, I'm happy to condemn. But they're scared to look at other people in the eyes because they don't love themselves. They're scared to look in the mirror and kiss it because they have so much self-hatred. They've been taught that they are not good enough. They don't mean to be phonies. It's not their fault. It's an egoic defense mechanism. It's a way that we wear masks. I wear masks, but I am not conscious enough not to. So there's the extra layer of self-judgment is not to judge ourselves. It is only painful to the ego. We have to learn to understand ourselves. We have to learn to love ourselves. God is not a painkiller. He's not something to pray to when you're in pain. God is not a man in the sky. He's far beyond that. He is the totality of existence. You are one with your Father. Whether you remember or you don't, will be of great significance to your well-being. And our well-being is what actually matters. It is not our production rate for the society. We are not robots. We are not machinery in factories. We are human beings, and we are here to expand our minds. So it's been about an hour. I love you all very much. We will speak very soon. Mwah.